For 11 years, I hid secrets behind a perfect marriage. One message, one lie, and everything began to unravel. Here is my story. The weight of what I never said. My name is Ava, and if there's one thing I've learned about marriage, it's this: lies don't always begin with deception. Sometimes they begin with fear. For 11 years, I was married to a man named Daniel. To everyone who knew us, we were the couple people envied. We owned a beautiful home, hosted holiday dinners, took smiling vacation photos, and remembered anniversaries. We looked solid. But appearances can be convincing. I know because I spent years helping create one. The first lie I told Daniel happened 6 months before our wedding. It wasn't a huge lie. At least, that's what I told myself at the time. I had accumulated nearly $30,000 in debt from failed business ventures and reckless spending in my 20s. When Daniel asked about my finances while we were planning our future together, I smiled and said everything was under control. Technically, I wasn't lying. The debt existed. The control did not. I convinced myself that I would pay it off before he ever needed to know. I would work harder, save more, fix the problem quietly, and eventually tell him. Then life happened. The wedding happened. A mortgage happened. And my secret followed me into every chapter of our marriage. For years, I hid bills. I redirected mail. I created separate online accounts. Every month I made minimum payments and prayed he wouldn't notice. Each time he talked about our future, my stomach tightened. "I think we're doing great financially," he'd say. I'd smile. And say nothing. The silence became another lie. The strange thing about secrets is that they rarely stay isolated. They spread. Like cracks in glass. A year after we got married, I received a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a decade. His name was Ryan. My first love. The man who had shattered my heart when I was 22. I should have ignored the message. Instead, I replied. At first, it seemed harmless. A few messages. Memories. Questions about where life had taken us. Daniel never knew. Why would he? I wasn't doing anything wrong. At least that's what I repeated to myself. But conversations became weekly. Then daily. Then constant. Ryan knew things about me that Daniel didn't. Not because Daniel wasn't interested. Because I never let him see those parts of me. With Ryan, I could revisit an older version of myself. The ambitious girl who wanted adventure. The woman who wasn't buried beneath responsibilities and routines. I wasn't in love with Ryan. I loved the way he reminded me who I used to be. There is a difference. But emotional affairs don't care about technical definitions. They grow in the spaces honesty leaves behind. One evening, Daniel sat beside me on the couch. "You've seemed distant lately." My heart jumped. "What do you mean?" "I don't know." He shrugged. "You're here, but you're not really here." I laughed. A forced, nervous laugh. "You're imagining things." "Lie." Daniel nodded slowly. But I saw the doubt in his eyes. The truth was that I had become an expert at dividing myself. One version of me existed inside our marriage. The other existed behind screens and passwords. And maintaining both versions was exhausting. By year 7, I barely recognized myself. The debt still existed. The secret conversations still existed. And new lies had appeared. Small ones. Daily ones. Where I'd been. Who I'd spoken to. Why I seemed distracted. Each lie required another. Then another. Until honesty felt harder than deception. One night, I woke up to find Daniel sitting alone in the kitchen. The clock read 2:17 a.m. He stared at a cup of coffee. "What are you doing up?" I asked. He looked at me. For a moment, I thought he knew everything. Instead, he said something worse. "Are you happy?" The question hit me harder than any accusation could have. Because I didn't know the answer. I loved him. I truly did. Daniel was kind. Loyal. Patient. The kind of man who remembered small details. The kind of husband who brought flowers for no reason. The kind of person who deserved complete honesty. And I was giving him fragments. "I'm tired," I said. "Another lie." He nodded. Neither of us spoke again. The distance between us felt larger than the room. Months later, my secret life finally collided with reality. Not dramatically. Not through some shocking discovery. Just a simple mistake. I left my laptop open. Ryan's message appeared on the screen. Daniel saw it. I still remember the expression on his face. Not anger. Not rage. Confusion. Pain. The kind of pain that arrives when reality suddenly changes shape. "Who's Ryan?" The room seemed to shrink around me. I could have told the truth then. Instead, I reached for another lie. "Just an old friend." Daniel looked at me. Then at the screen. Then back at me. "You talk every day." I couldn't answer. "You been hiding this?" Silence. The evidence sat between us. Every message. Every conversation. Years of secrecy. And suddenly there was nowhere left to hide. For hours, we talked. Actually, talked. For the first time in years. The truth came out piece by piece. Ryan. The debt. The hidden accounts. Everything. Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt. That somehow made it worse. When I finally finished, he sat quietly. The silence felt endless. Then he asked a question I never expected. Why? Not why Ryan. Not why the debt. Not why the lies. Just why. A simple question. One I had never honestly answered for myself. I cried harder than I had in years. Because beneath every lie was the same truth. Fear. Fear of disappointing him. Fear of appearing imperfect. Fear that if he saw all of me, he wouldn't love me anymore. So I hid. And in hiding, I created the very thing I feared. Distance. Distrust. Loneliness. Daniel sat across from me for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "You should have let me know who you really were." I looked down. "I know. I married you." His voice cracked. "Not some perfect version of you." Those words stayed with me. Because he was right. I had spent years trying to protect our marriage from uncomfortable truths. Instead, I had nearly destroyed it. The weeks that followed were brutal. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. There were arguments. Tears. Long conversations neither of us wanted to have. Daniel asked difficult questions. I answered every one. No more hiding. No more editing. No more carefully crafted versions of reality. For the first time in years, honesty became my only option. And strangely, it felt like freedom. I ended contact with Ryan. Not because Daniel demanded it. Because I finally understood what the relationship represented. It wasn't about Ryan. It was about escape. And escaping had solved nothing. I also revealed every financial record. Every debt. Every account. Every mistake. Watching Daniel review those numbers was humiliating. Yet something unexpected happened. He didn't leave. He got angry. He got hurt. But he stayed. Together, we created a plan. For the debt. For rebuilding trust. For rebuilding us. Progress was slow. Some wounds heal gradually. Others leave scars. There were days when Daniel looked at me differently. Days when I saw doubt in his eyes. Days when I wondered whether we'd survive. But there were also moments of hope. Small moments. Shared coffee in the morning. Honest conversations at night. Laughter returning when neither of us expected it. One evening, almost a year after everything came out, we sat on our back porch watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold. Daniel squeezed my hand. A simple gesture. Yet it meant everything. I miss who we used to be, he admitted. I nodded. So do I. He was quiet. Then he surprised me. But maybe who we used to be wasn't real. I looked at him. What do you mean? He smiled sadly. We were living inside a story. A breeze moved through the trees. We're finally living in the truth. The words settled over me. Because he was right. The marriage people envied had never actually existed. It had been built on omissions. Assumptions. Unspoken fears. The marriage we had now was messier. Less perfect. More fragile. But it was real. And reality, I learned, is stronger than illusion. Years have passed since then. We're still together. Not because forgiveness erased the past. Because forgiveness allowed us to move forward despite it. Trust returned slowly. Like a sunrise. Almost invisible at first. Then impossible to ignore. Sometimes Daniel still asks questions about that period of our lives. And I answer. Completely. Every time. Because honesty isn't something you achieve once. It's something you practice. Something you choose repeatedly. Looking back, I understand that my greatest mistake wasn't the debt. It wasn't Ryan. It wasn't even the lies themselves. My greatest mistake was believing love depended on perfection. I thought my flaws would drive Daniel away. I thought my failures made me unworthy. I thought hiding the truth protected us. But love cannot truly exist where honesty is absent. Secrets create walls. Truth creates connection. Even when the truth hurts. Especially when it hurts. Today, when I look at my husband, I see someone who knows my worst mistakes. My fears. My weaknesses. My regrets. And he's still here. Not because I fooled him. Not because I maintained an image. But because eventually I stopped pretending. The lies nearly cost me everything. The truth saved what remained. And if there's one thing I wish I had learned sooner, it's this. The people who truly love you aren't waiting for a flawless version of you. They're waiting for the real one. The version brave enough to stop hiding. The version willing to tell the truth. Before the weight of what remains unsaid becomes too heavy to carry. There was one part of the story I never told Daniel when everything first came out. Not because I wanted to hide it. Because I was ashamed of how small it sounded. After all the lies, the debt, and the secret messages, this truth seemed insignificant. But it wasn't. In some ways, it was the reason everything else happened. A few months after our wedding, I stopped believing I deserved the life I had. Daniel was successful. Confident. Steady. He seemed to know exactly who he was. I, on the other hand, felt like I was constantly pretending. Every achievement felt temporary. Every compliment felt undeserved. Whenever something good happened, a voice inside my head whispered the same thing. If they knew the real you, this would all disappear. I never told Daniel about those thoughts. Instead, I smiled. I acted confident. I played the role of a woman who had everything together. The more praise I received, the more pressure I felt to maintain that image. Looking back, I realized I wasn't only lying to him. I was lying to myself. I told myself I was protecting our happiness. I told myself I could handle everything alone. I told myself secrets were manageable. They weren't. One Saturday afternoon, long after the truth had come out, Daniel and I were cleaning the garage. We found an old box filled with wedding photographs. For a while, we sat on the floor flipping through them. There we were. Young. Excited. Hopeful. The smiles looked genuine because they were. Despite everything that happened afterward, I know I loved him that day. Daniel stared at one photograph longer than the others. It showed us dancing at our reception. My head rested on his shoulder. His eyes were closed. Neither of us was paying attention to the camera. It was a real moment. An honest one. "What are you thinking?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "I'm wondering when we stop talking." The question lingered in the air. Because neither of us knew exactly when it happened. There wasn't a single moment. No dramatic turning point. Just thousands of tiny choices. A difficult conversation avoided. A feeling left unspoken. A concern buried. A fear hidden. Day by day, the distance grew. Neither of us noticed until it became impossible to ignore. That realization changed something for me. For years, I had viewed our problems as individual mistakes. My debt. My lies. My secrets. But marriage is rarely damaged by one event alone. It's damaged when two people slowly stop sharing their inner worlds. After that day, Daniel and I made a promise. Not a dramatic promise. Not the kind people make in movies. A practical one. Every week, we would sit down and talk. No phones. No television. No distractions. Just honesty. At first it felt awkward. We had spent years discussing schedules, bills, errands, and responsibilities. Talking about emotions felt unfamiliar. But eventually it became easier. One evening, Daniel admitted something that shocked me. I was angry long before I discovered the truth. I looked at him. "Why?" He shrugged. I didn't know what was wrong. His eyes met mine. "I just felt like I couldn't reach you anymore." The words hurt because they were true. I had become emotionally unavailable long before my secrets were exposed. While I was protecting my lies, I had unknowingly shut him out. That conversation helped me understand something important. Trust isn't only about honesty. It's also about access. Letting someone see your fears. Your doubts. Your disappointments. Your failures. For years, Daniel had access to my accomplishments but not my struggles. That isn't true intimacy. That's performance. And eventually every performance becomes exhausting. As the second year after our crisis passed, life slowly settled into a new rhythm. The debt was nearly gone. The secrecy was gone completely. Our marriage wasn't perfect. No marriage is. But it felt stronger. One night, I received an unexpected message on social media. It was from Ryan. The first contact in almost 2 years. My heart skipped. Not because I wanted to speak with him. Because the old version of me immediately wanted to hide it. That instinct appeared before I could stop it. For a split second, I considered deleting the message and pretending it never happened. Then I remembered where that road led. I walked directly into the living room. Daniel was reading a book. "Something happened," I said. He looked up. "What is it?" I handed him my phone. He read the message. Then looked at me. And smiled. Not because the situation was funny. Because I had told him immediately. Because I had chosen transparency instead of secrecy. "Thank you," he said quietly. The relief I felt in that moment was overwhelming. Not relief that he trusted me. Relief that I no longer had to carry things alone. That was the greatest difference between my old life and my new one. The burden had disappeared. Secrets are heavy. Heavier than most people realize. They demand constant attention. Constant maintenance. Constant fear. Truth can be painful, but it is surprisingly light. Years later, on our 15th wedding anniversary, Daniel and I returned to the same restaurant where we had celebrated our engagement. The place hadn't changed much. The same wooden tables. The same soft lighting. The same view of the water. As we ate dinner, we found ourselves talking about the past. Not avoiding it. Not dwelling on it. Simply acknowledging it. At one point, Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. You know something? What? I trust you more now than I did back then. I laughed. That doesn't make any sense. It does. He squeezed my hand gently. Back then I trusted the version of you that you showed me. His expression softened. Now I trust the real one. I felt tears forming in my eyes. Because those words represented everything I had spent years learning. Real trust isn't built when people appear flawless. It's built when they reveal their imperfections and stay anyway. As we left the restaurant that night, I thought about the woman I had been all those years ago. The woman hiding debt. Hiding fear. Hiding conversations. Hiding herself. I don't hate her. She was scared. She believed secrecy would protect the people she loved. She was wrong. But she was trying. The woman I am now understands something she never did. Love doesn't grow in the shadows. It grows in the light. In uncomfortable conversations. In difficult confessions. In moments when telling the truth feels terrifying. Because those are the moments that create genuine connection. The lies nearly ended my marriage. The secrets nearly cost me the best person in my life. But the truth gave me something better than the perfect image I had spent years protecting. It gave me a real marriage. One built not on appearances, but on honesty. And every morning when I wake beside Daniel, I remember a lesson that took me far too long to learn. The heaviest words are often the ones left unsaid. And the bravest thing a person can do is finally speak them.